Yeah. Okay, so we're doing the second class on the Maimer Kedoshim Tihyu, chof, aleph, which is printed in the Look at Hay. This is a Maimer that the Rebbe said on the day of Yud Gimel Iyar, which is the yahrzeit of his brother Rabbi Yisrael Aryeh, and he had it published in honor of Yud Gimel Iyar, Tavshin Nun Aleph.
And he
So
did
this,
it in his room.
and he did it in his room. We spoke about it last
Why?
time.
Because,
I don't know.
no, because he didn't
Yeah.
want Rebbe Tzchana. The Rebbe Tzchana would pass away chof. He didn't want her to
Interesting.
know about it.
Interesting.
That's why he did it quietly. He was writing letters. He didn't.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
This is Shalai Leib's.
Yeah, of course,
That's
of
what I'm
course,
saying.
of course.
So I'm saying so
It
that's
makes
why
sense why he would
that's
do
why
it
it
in his
makes
room.
sense.
Okay, very
Okay,
good, very good.
perfect.
Okay, the camera caught that, so now we have that because we mentioned last week that he did it in his room, but nobody had an
Realize
idea why. Yeah. Okay, so what we learned so far in the Maimer is that the Medrash says that there's two levels, that each one of them have two levels. There's the level of Kedoshim, of that you should be holy, or a Bechina, we should call it, and then there's the Bechina of God, of Gedula, of greatness. Okay? So on the level of Kedusha, the Medrash says, Kedoshim Tihyu ki Kadosh ani yachal kameini. I would have thought that you could be holy like my holiness. Says the Medrash, no. Kedusha si, l'mayla mi Kedusha aschem. That my holiness, the Abish's holiness, is higher than the Yidden's holiness. So you have a b'china of holiness, of Kedusha, and within that you have two levels, the Yidden's holiness and the Abish's level of holiness. The Medrash also says the same word when you get to the Gedula, the Yisem Lamaila. So what does the Medrash say? The Yisarak Lamaila says the pasuk there. The Medrash says that there's a Gedula of the Abishter and there's a Gedula of the Yidden. So in Gedula also, in greatness, there are also two levels. There's the greatness of the Yidden and there's the greatness of the Eibishter. Okay, so we have two b'chinas, holiness and greatness, and in each one of them you have the Yidden's holiness or the Yidden's greatness, and then you have the higher one, which is the Eibishter's holiness, the Eibishter's greatness. He explained that in order to reach the level of regular Kedusha, for that you do the Aveda of mitzvahs, which it sounds like he's saying that that's the Aveda of tzaddikim. But then, in order to reach the level of the kedusha of the Eibishter, so for that you have to have the aveda of tshuva. Okay. Now, in Gedula, he says also that there's the regular aveda that a yid reaches, through which a yid reaches Gedula, but then there's a higher type of aveda that you have to do in order to reach the level of Gedula. See the Gedula of the Eibishter. Okay. Nevertheless, on the top of Reish Nun Ches, he says, "Shagam Amshach Tzchinis Gedula Si Shalamayim Gedula Aschem Hi Aldei Aveda Satzadikim." Okay, so the level of kedusha of gedula si that a yid reaches is the aveda of tzaddikim. There's only one aveda that you need, that in order to reach it you need the aveda of tshuva, and that's kedusha si, my holiness. So for the level of kedusha schem, and for the level of gedula schem, and for the level of gedula si, all of those levels, the aveda of mitzvahs, which he's talking over here, he's using the basis of that's aveda tzaddikim. But then the highest level, the Aveda of Kedushasi, of my holiness, for that only you can only reach it through Aveda Satshova. Okay? That's what he said until Gimel. Now in Gimel he starts explaining it. He says like this: there's a pasuk for Yasfa Anavim B'Havaya Simcha V'Evgeni Adam B'Kadesh Yisrael Yagilu. The pasuk says that the humble ones will add joy or happiness to Havaya, and the destitute. Yeah, Rabbi Abraham touched for us yesterday. Evgeni Amcha is the is somebody who has nothing at all. He's completely destitute. So the destitute of your nation will rejoice with Kadesh Yisrael. So he says over here that there are two levels of Yidden, and there's two levels Lamaila that he's talking about. There's the level of Anovim, and that's the level of Tzaddikim. I mean, again, to them we say that they have to do with Shem Havaya, and they add happiness in Shem Havaya. Then there's the level of a Yid that's an Evian, and that's the Aveda of Bali Tshuva, and that reaches to Kadesh Yisrael. And he explained in Gimel as follows, that you have the Gedula of Shem Havaya on its own. However, that Gedula is a limited level of Gedula, and therefore the Ispashtus of Shem Havaya isn't infinite, it has a Hagbala, it has a boundary. But then through the Aveda of Tzaddikim, we bring in the level of Gdula Si, the Abishta's greatness, that which he calls the Eirin Sof Shalamayla Mishaychas La'elam is. So through the Aveda of Tzaddikim, we're mamshich into Shem Havaya Eirin Sof Shalamayla Mishaychas La'elam is, and this has no limit in how far it's mispashet. So now we draw down Shem Havaya even further than it would have been drawn down on its own, because Shem Havaya now has in it from the Eirin Sof Shalamayla Mishaychas La'elam is. So we're Meisif Simcha and Havaya were Meisif Hamshacha and Havaya. The second Akudah is that if Yenei Adam b'Kadesh Yisrael Yagilu, if Yenei Adam, these are the Bali Tshuva, and they reach already something else entirely Kadesh Yisrael, which is entirely beyond Shem Havaya. Okay? It's higher than the level of Gdulasi. And this is the Aveda of Tshuva. Okay, so until now we have a system, but we don't have any beer. And now the Rebbe is going to start explaining, so we should be able to understand this system, right? That you have the Kedushas Kedushasi, Gdulas Gdulasi, the Aveda of Tzadikim, and the Aveda of Bali Tshuva. And after through the Aveda of Bali Tshuva, you reach the level of Kedushasi, and Aveda Tzadikim only reaches an Ein Sof Shalom Maila Mishach Leilem, and it draws it down to Shem Havaya. And the Aveda of Bali Tshuva reaches even beyond that to the level of Kadesh Yisrael. That's a summary of what we learned until now. Okay, we're good? Okay. The pasuk in Shir Shirim says that we say to the Eibishter, who will give you? Who will, in other words, it's like a lashon of I wish. Halavai, that you should be like a brother to me, who nourishes from the same source that I nourish from. In other words, that we're on the same, we're nourishing from the same level. Upirish Rashi explains this. What are we asking? The Eibishter should come and console us. There was a situation where the brothers of Yosef did something wrong. They wronged Yosef. Nevertheless, what did Yosef do? He consoled them. He gave them solace. He helped them feel good. So we're asking the Eibishter, maybe we did things that we shouldn't have. So we're asking the Eibishter, you should act with us like Yosef acted with his brothers. However, there's another pirush in this pasuk. The same story, the same situation, but he says not like Yosef to his brothers, but rather like Yosef to his specific brother Binyamin. The difference being, of course, that Binyamin was not part of the story of selling Yosef. He didn't wrong him. And Yosef and Binyamin wasn't also there when Yosef was testing his brothers when they came to Mitzrayim. So the Medrash says no, not like Yosef to his brothers, meaning the who came from the other ones of the Emais, but rather like Binyamin. Tzemach Tzedek explains as follows: why are we asking for the treatment that Yosef gave to Binyamin, according to the Medrash, and not like the treatment that Yosef gave to his brothers? And see, what's that?
That the pasuk says, "Mishtei me from my mother's breast."
Correct.
So they mean to say that if this
His brothers,
mean to say that if
so you say that it matches better
it
the
matches
Pirush
better
of the
Binyamin,
Medrash,
because it's the same Rachel. They both had Rachel.
which is the Pirush of the Medrash. Yeah.
Which is the alternate. First we said that it was
Pirush Rashi was the other brothers.
So while we're being more medayik,
Yeah.
that it's
Yeah. Good. Yeah. So now, but why should we choose?
the comparison to Binyamin.
No, the comparison to his brothers. So he explains in the brackets. We're asking the Eibishter for kindness, right? Where do you see greater kindness? So he says in the brackets, it's a bigger chiddush. He did for them tremendous good. So we should ask the Eibishter to act with us like Yosef with his other brothers. So listen to this beautiful explanation of the Tzemach Tzedek. We'll all feel it in our heart. The story with the other brothers is that before he did them good, first he pained them. Now he did it for the best intentions, and it was a good thing, because through this they gained atonement for the sin that they sold him. So it's very good, and he did it for the good, and it was good, but it was very, very painful. And therefore the Tzemach Tzedek says we don't ask for such treatment, because the Eibishter could do whatever he wants.
At first he put him through a whole number.
A tremendous number. Agony.
And finally, when he exploded himself, don't worry, I'm not being vengeful.
Right, and he wasn't. The thing is that they had to acknowledge their error. And they had to, the only way to truly acknowledge it, the proof that you know that somebody changed his ways, is when you see that he comes to the same situation and he acts differently. And he engineered a situation where the brothers had every reason to abandon Binyamin, another one of their brothers, and the only reason to stay with Binyamin was because of brotherhood. And he proved that they did tshuva, and now that it was absolutely clear that they did tshuva, so now they gained atonement for their avera,
Yeah.
which it removed the one thing that was a stain on them, it removed it from them. However, nevertheless, the Eibushter is a kol yachol, and therefore in the nusach of Kriyas Shema Lamita, v'kivin shana mevakshim mechaik v'rachmecha harabim aval lo yalidei yisurim. Yeah, we know the tricks. We know if we would just say mechaik v'rachmecha harabim, then it might mean yisurim. So therefore, we add the words. Please use the option B, without. Yeah, B for better, without yisurim, without torture, without pain. Therefore, the Tzemach Tzedek says, that's why the Medrash says that we're asking that the Eibishter should act with us as Yosef behaved with Binyamin, which Binyamin never sold him, and Yosef never caused him pain, and that's what we ask of the Eibishter. So Deb has a question, and I have a question. I'm going to say, yeah, what's the whole meaning of this pasuk? That although we didn't behave properly, the Eibshter should still act with us like a brother. But in the story of Yosef and Binyamin didn't behave inappropriately. He didn't do anything against Yosef. So we're saying even though we did do something wrong, the Eibshter should act with us like Yosef with Binyamin. But what kind of zushtel is that? It's a different story. Yosef and Binyamin, there was nobody doing something wrong. So how does the situation of Yosef and Binyamin apply to us if we did do something wrong? Okay, Pashta Shaila. The name of what we look at the Torah, the Maskal Mi Tancha Ka'achli. To me, Tancha Ka'achli, Kai al Tzadikim. The Rebbe, look at the Torah, has a different pirish. Mi Tancha Ka'achli, that's actually talking about Tzadikim, not people who did something wrong, but rather Tzadikim who did no wrong. Then the continuation of the pasuk, then I find you on the outside. That's already talking about Bali Tshuva. So Ibazay, Mitancha Ka'achli is matches the story of Yosef and Binyamin because it's the story of Tshuva, of Tzadikim. L'churi Yishlem and Raskas will get to Mitancha Ka'achli Kayal Tzadikim who appears Hamedesh Ka'achli who Yosef to Binyamin is Alter Rebbe, and look at the Torah follows the Pirish of the Medrash that's Yosef to Binyamin, and Binyamin did nothing wrong. He was a tzaddik. But if we follow the explanation of Rashi, that Ka'achli is saying, like Yosef to his brothers, you have to say that the beginning of the pasuk is Taka talking about Bali Tshuva as we were understanding it until this point. כי הבקשה היא שהקדוש ברוך הוא ימחק את בנסיון של ילדי יסורים מובן לחודש שגם לפירוש המדרש ודבר הכסוף ובעלי תשובה ובלכותתנו מפרש שמי ייתן לך כאחלי קוי על צדיקים. But l'chora, according to the Tzemach Tzedek, it comes out that the beginning of the pasuk, where it is talking about a situation of forgiving us for our sins, that's the Tzemach Tzedek said clearly that we want that there should be forgiveness, but without Yisunim. So Tzemach Tzedek clearly learns that there's a situation of Averis and there's a situation of forgiveness. And Eibazeh, the beginning of the pasuk, is not talking about the Aveda of Tzadikim, it's talking about the Aveda of Bali Tshuva. So we have the Alter Rebbe's Pirish in Likutei Torah, who says that we're talking about that the beginning of the pasuk Mi'itencha Kachli is the Aveda of Tzadikim, and we have the Tzemach Tzedek's Pirish, the Mi'itencha Kachli is talking about the Aveda of Bali Tshuva. Okay. Now, Beis Hey is going to be a very interesting discussion about the Aveda of a Baal Tshuva and the story of a Baal Tshuva. Yeah, what's really happening over here? So he says like this: it's known that it's known that why is it that Yosef descended to Mitzrayim? What did the Eibishter want with this? It was in order that he should gather all of the sparks of holiness that were in Mitzrayim. And like it says in the pasuk, Yosef is called Kesef and Imsa Be'eretz Mitzrayim. Then in the days of hunger, he was the only one who had food. He was the only one with food that wasn't rotting. And everybody, all of the money of Mitzrayim went to him. So by him gathering in the Nitzetis, which was in the wealth and in the money of Mitzrayim, so through this, the galus of the Yidden that arrived later in Mitzrayim was much easier, was much less. How does this fit with what we say that why did the Yidden end up going down to Mitzrayim? Because Yosef was there. Yeah, if you follow Pasha the story, Yaakov and his children were in Eretz Canaan, where there was a hunger just like there was in Mitzrayim, and they went to buy food from Yosef, and they would have gone back if Yosef wasn't Yosef to say. So they went to buy food from the visor in Mitzrayim, from the man, Ha'ish, Dibel Itano Ha'ish Kashes, from the man in Mitzrayim, they would have gone back. Why did they end up staying in Mitzrayim? Because Yosef was there. So, and what came out of that? A golus. So according to the simple understanding, the simple storyline, what's the story? That Yosef was the cause, or the Yerid of Yosef from Mitzrayim, selling Yosef to Mitzrayim was what brought about golus Mitzrayim. But that's only b'chitzonius. It's actually the other way around. It's the opposite. This Yosef l'Mitzrayim hu kol hagolus. The golus would have been anyways.
Because of what he promised to Abraham.
He's going to get to it soon. Good. The golus would have been anyways. But because Yosef was there before, he already did much of the work. He already gathered a lot of the nitzitzis, and now the Yidden's work, the remaining work that Yidden had to do was much less, and therefore their golus was able to be much shorter. As he's going to explain. The Gzeda, lechatchila from the Eivishter, was a golus of 400 years. By the day, she ordered Yosef l'Mitzrayim, hebe golus Mitzrayim, and akredu shana, 210. Ki al day, she Yosef bitter the sanitzaitzis shoybe Mitzrayim, lifnei she ordered b'nei Yisrael l'Mitzrayim, lehutzruchu levarer kol kach. Why was the golus able to be shortened? Because through this, that Yosef went down to Mitzrayim and already collected so many nitzitzis, so therefore they didn't have to be in golus and they didn't have so much work to do over there. He said, it wasn't only a reduction from 400 to 210, but the actual hardship of the golus and the really hard part of it was only 86 years. Move on. So what's the upshot? What do we have out of this? That the brothers sold Yosef to Mitzrayim, not only that it wasn't Hepech HaKavana, but rather that was actually the exact intention that the Eivishter wanted should happen. Okay? And here we're starting to get into the classical case of an Aveda. Right? When a Yid does an Aveda, so we say that there was a Kavana El Yena in the Aveda. We're going to soon see in detail. There was a Kavana, there was a reason why the Eibishter wanted that this should end up happening. Okay? And in the story of Yosef and his brothers, if you say that Yosef's sale to Mitzrayim is what caused them to go into Golus, so then you say that the Aveda wasn't Al Pi HaKavana. Right, but if you say that his sale to Mitzrayim was in order to lighten the load of the Yidden when they came there later, so it comes out that his sale to Mitzrayim was actually according to the Eivishter's plan and his intention that there should be easier work for them. Why is it a sin then? Because they didn't know that this is the kavanah of the Eivishter. Their intention was to sell him for the reasons that they had, and that's why it's considered a sin. But there's a deeper and more subtle point of it that Deb is going to make in the next days, in the next paragraph. Why was the So the Rebbe said over here like this. Initially, in the first paragraph, the Rebbe said, what led us to the conclusion that the sale of Yosef was al pi hakavana, when we discovered that in Pnimiyus Yanim, the sale of Yosef lightened the load of the Golus, right? But if we looked at it just as a Golus, that the sale of Yosef was what brought about the Golus, then what would we say? We don't see a Kavan Elyon over here. So the only reason why we see a Kavan Elyon is why? Because through this we lighten the load of the Yidden and Golus. I'm not explaining the point that he's going to say so clearly. We're saying this is like this. We have two reasons why the Shvatim sold Yosef to Mitzrayim, okay? Or two outcomes of the fact that the Shvatim sold Yosef to Mitzrayim. One outcome was that the Yidden ended up going into Golus, right? That's one outcome.
That's not so good.
And that's not so good. And that you say would be Hepech HaKavana. Another outcome is that their load was lightened. The shibud of the Yidden and Mitzrayim later became less because Yosef was there before and he collected the Netzetzes, so they don't have to do that work. Okay? Now we're saying like this. What's the behavior of Yosef according to the Shvatim? So we say like this. If you look at it, that it brought about Golus Mitzrayim, so you say no. So it was a chet. It was against the Kavan Elyon. But if you realize with Pnimi Seinanim that it brought about a lessening of the Golus, then you say it was Al Pi Kavan Elyon. Okay. Over here in the beginning of this paragraph, the Rebbe says actually, even if you understand the story Kipshuta, that the sale of Yosef to Mitzrayim brought about what? The Golus. Even then you have to say that it's Al Pi HaKavana. It's still Al Pi HaKavana. Okay, even without this reason, it's still Al Pi HaKavana. So what's the difference then between these two ways of looking at it? What's bothering you?
No, I'm saying that in the other case, it's more, the kavan is more hidden, and what's more pronounced is the fact that it's an avera that caused this whole thing. While in the other the other Piddish, it's more open, the fact that this was a Kodesh Baruch Hu's kavanah. So, but it's the same.
So he's going to bring out an even bigger difference. You're right, but he's going to bring out a more fundamental difference. You're speaking levels of revelation. He's going to bring out a more essential difference, a more fundamental difference. Okay, so he says like this. But according to the first Piddish, what was the result of the brothers selling Yosef to Mitzrayim? Something unwanted happened. Even though the intention of Golus Mitzrayim is that the Yidden should merit to receive the Torah from the Eibishter, nevertheless, the Golus itself is what? Is an unwanted thing. It's a Golus. In other words, like this. Something good always comes out of the fact that somebody ended up in sin. That's why it's part of the intention. If he takes the opportunity to do what he's supposed to do afterwards. And the Seder is usually like this. The person does something not good. The Aveda itself is Heipach HaKavana. The Aveda itself is not what the Eibishter wants. Okay? Let's be clear with it. Okay? But the point is that then there's a consequence to his action. Okay? And that consequence is not a good one. So the question is like this. This consequence, this situation that he finds himself after the sin, is that something that the Eibishter wants, or is that something the Eibishter doesn't want? So he's saying like this. How do you look at Golus Mitzrayim? If you say that Golus Mitzrayim was the result of the Aveda that the Shvatim did, that they sold Yosef into Mitzrayim, so then Golus Mitzrayim itself is not good. Okay? What's the benefit of it? So what's the Eibishter's plan? What's the storyline? The Eibishter's plan is that through this not good situation of Golus Mitzrayim, they're going to reach something even higher. But while you're in Mitzrayim, it's not good. Right? You're in a situation of pain, of suffering. Okay? So the only good is what comes out of it later. Now you're in Avedas Perech, like you said. So Hagolus Atzma Yinim Bilti Ratzim. Okay, it's the line that starts Hatera. On the other hand, according to the explanation, that through Yosef going to Mitzrayim, the Golus burden was lessened. So this, that the Shvatim sold Yosef to Mitzrayim is actually a good thing. Why? Because through this, the Golus is lessened. It was a sin to them only because that wasn't their intention. But the actual sale of Yosef to Mitzrayim is a good thing, because Yosef will go and gather the Nitzitzis so that the Yidden don't have to suffer for so many more years later. Okay? So there's two ways of looking at it. Yosef's sale bringing about that the Yidden should go into Golus, and if not for that, then they wouldn't be in Golus. And therefore, what are you saying? The only good thing that you had out of Golus was not the Golus itself, was not the result of Yosef's sale, but is something that happens later. The Kabbalah Satera, Matan Torah, that comes later. Okay? But Yosef ending up in Mitzrayim brought only bad. It brought only suffering. Okay? On the other hand, if you say the Pirush B'Pnimi Yanim, so what are we saying over here?
That he lightened the load.
That he lightened the load. So what were the Shvatim doing when they sold him to Mitzrayim? They were bringing about something that we want. We want to lighten the load.
But unconsciously, they were not. As far as
That remains. That remains.
They didn't know that, obviously.
Yeah, that remains. But the question is the thing itself.
Yeah, the thing itself.
The thing itself is they were actually accomplishing something good. Okay?
Without them knowing about it.
Yeah, and when we say they were accomplishing something good, not good in the sense that it's going to lead to good later, but that it itself is good because it lightens the load of Golus. Okay, according to this, we could explain what Yosef said to the Shvatim when they were afraid of him and when they were ashamed of themselves. So Yosef tells them, I think this is actually, no, it's in Vayikra still, okay. When they were ashamed, so he tells them, don't be saddened or don't be unhappy. Don't become angered for this that you sold me here to Mitzrayim. Because the Eibishter sent me so that I can give you sustenance, I can give you food so you could live. What's Yosef telling his brothers? Anytime somebody sins, it's all according to the Hashkach Elyena, and it's according to the Ratzon of the Eibishter that this should happen. And nevertheless, we say by every sin, since he, with his own free volition, he chose to do the sin, that we have free choice when it comes to matters of sin. Therefore, the person who sinned, he's the one who brought about this loss to himself and this blemish to himself. And therefore, it's appropriate and right and fitting for him that he should cry and bemoan his sins. Why is it that Yosef tells his brothers, don't be saddened and don't be angered? What's Yosef telling them? Yosef is telling them like this. You had in mind to sell me for one reason. But you should know that the Eibishter actually had in mind a different reason. And therefore what? Don't be saddened and don't be angered. Don't be bothered by it. That's true by everything. What's Yosef's chiddush? That the Eibishter had a different reason. The Eibishter always has a different reason. It's true for every situation. So and even though it's true for every situation, we still say that a person has to be saddened and tremendously bothered over his sins because it was his choice to do it. Apart from the Eibishter's Indian that he had in it, plan that he had in it. So what's Yosef telling his brothers? He's telling them, don't be saddened because the Eibishter had his own plan in this. It says in Torah that even though the Eibishter has his own plan, if you chose to do something, then you have to be sad over it. So how's he bringing comfort to his brothers? Doesn't add up. No.
He's been calm. He's telling them that that they were your intentions were bad, but here's the reality of the situation.
And what does it say in Torah about that? That a person should be sad about his actions. So that brings from the Rambam.
But at the same time, you should also be okay. You have charata al ha'ovar, but it's not that now somebody's telling you you're having charata al ha'ovar.
The Rambam writes, yeah.
But it's almost al ha'ovar.
It doesn't matter. But how should you be now? What are you doing now about the past? You're crying.
Right.
Yosef is telling his brothers, don't
cry.
So I was asking, what do you mean, don't cry?
He's taking them on to a higher level of existence.
But that's true for everything. It's true for every sin. And we still say for every sin, why? You had choice, and you chose, and therefore you have to cry about it, to do tshuva. So what's he telling them not to, that they don't have to, and that they shouldn't?
Oh yeah, but it's always there. I do with a higher purpose.
Right, you could say the same thing there.
Yeah, but, okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Where are you at? You're already at Vav? I mean, no,
We're not at Vav at all. We're on Reish Samach. It's about 8 lines from the bottom of the page. V'yesh leimer habir b'zeh. See it? V'yesh leimer habir b'zeh. So the Rebbe is going to point out that over here we're dealing with a interesting situation. In all sins, the things that the person did, he did something that the Eibishter does not want. And this is contrary to the Eibishter's will. If somebody eats basar v'cholov, somebody eats milk and meat together, yeah? Does the Eibishter want the milk and meat to be eaten together? No. If somebody Chas V'Shalom finds that he did, either because he was having challenging days or because by mistake, okay? So we say you should know. After the fact, we tell the person you should know the Eibishter has a plan. You did it for one reason, okay? The Eibishter did not want you to do it because the Eibishter absolutely does not want milk and meat to be eaten together, and that remains. But the situation that was caused by this brought you now to a higher level because now you're doing tshuva, and you reached a deeper level, a more sincere level of serving the Eibishter. You return to the Eibishter in an even greater way than you were before. Okay? That's the story that we usually tell somebody. But the thing itself, the eating the milk and meat together, does the Eibishter want it? No. Okay? Even though all sin, we say that it's according to Hashgacha Prati, it's according to the Eibishter's will, and therefore there must be a reason for it. Nevertheless, here's the key statement: the Eibishter does not want the actual milk and meat to be eaten together. The Eibishter wants that through the sin he will later come to the higher level of tshuva.
So what we're really saying is that the Aveda is a tool
Is a bad thing.
As a tool for going higher.
It's not a tool. I don't know, but it brings about a situation where you go higher.
So
it brings a new depth.
Are on a higher level than tzaddikim who don't have the Aveda.
Correct. But the sin itself, since a person knows that yesterday he did something that Pashat the Eibishter does not want should be. He ate milk and meat together. Chas V'Shalom was B'chal Shabbos, or whatever it is that he did, was nasty to another yid. You know, that's just as severe as the other ones. He did something that he's not supposed to do. Okay, so a normal person thinks about it and it bothers him. Here, the Eibishter loves me, and the Eibishter is here, and he's fully aware of what's going on, and he's the ultimate goodness. He gives me everything, and I love him, and I did something that he does not want, and he cries over it. Okay, but let's look now what happened with Yosef and with the sale of Yosef to Mitzrayim. What happened when the Shvatim sold Yosef to Mitzrayim? This wasn't the story where something that the Eibishter does not want should happen happened, and only we wanted to do tshuva later. The Eibishter did want Yosef to end up in Mitzrayim. Yosef is telling them the Eibishter wanted me here because somebody's going to have to feed you. And especially according to what we just turned the page, especially according to what we learned earlier, that by Yosef going to Mitzrayim, now Golus was less. Okay. Now we understand why you shouldn't be sad. Unlike eating milk and meat together, or being the Halal Shabbos, or being nasty to a Yid, the Eibishter does not want those things to happen. Sending Yosef to Mitzrayim, the Eibishter did want that should happen. And that's what Yosef was pointing out to them. This is not like other sins. In other sins, the person has to be sad. What's the pnimius of his sadness? That he did the opposite of what the Eibishter wants. Here the Eibishter said, please don't do this. And he went ahead and did it. And he's sad about that. Over here, the Eibishter didn't say, please don't do this. The Eibishter wanted Yosef to be in Mitzrayim. So Yosef is telling them, don't be sad. You did exactly what the Eibishter wants should be. Okay? Clear?
Yeah.
But it was still an Aveda on their part.
Yeah.
That remains, that never goes away.
The actual thing was the good thing. That's what he's trying to tell them.
No, I'm looking at it a little bit different. I'm just saying that the Aveda was used as a stepping stone.
When somebody
in order to bring about.
When somebody says, I regret my choices, yeah? So what's he saying? My ego, my sense of self and certain dignity and respect, and my what I think about myself feels that I was stupid. And because I was stupid, so now I feel ashamed and bad about myself. Such a type of a person, we say, get over yourself. Get over yourself. Forget about your ego and stop feeling stupid about what you did yesterday. Guess what? You're human. You were never that great in the first place, whatever. It's ego-driven, this sense of your feelings, okay? But what if the situation is different? Where the person is not, he's not feeling bad. He doesn't regret his choices. He regrets that yesterday he did something the Eibishter asked him, please don't do it. So you can't tell the guy, get over it. The Eibishter said, please don't do it, and I did it. That's something to feel very sad about. I'm not talking about in today's day and age where we can't handle sadness, and the best way to do tshuva is through simcha, whatever it is. It's not for now, but the Indian itself. You can't tell him get over it the next day, right? So what we're saying over here is Yosef is telling them, you didn't do something that the Eibishter didn't want. You did something Eibishter does want. He wants me to be in Mitzrayim. So what's left? Your choices. Okay, your choices. I don't think the Shvatim would have been upset about their choices. They weren't at that level. The life was centered by the Eibishter, and they have to do some residual tshuva for sure for their bechira. But Yosef doesn't have to give them comfort and give them cheshbonos to get over yourself. They're capable of getting over themselves. Okay. All right. El Shaddai Mokim Leimar Hagam Shel Michya.
Okay, the story also says that they're not. It wasn't a matter of choices. It says over here that when Yosef came down to meet him, where they were pasturing the sheep, he says they were busy holding Bezdin already. So it's really more of a psak din. They did it based on a Torah. They could have been Bezdin could have made a mistake. You can say, but they did it al pi Torah.
Okay, so that's a separate question. You make up your mind. Was it al pi Torah or was
people al pi Torah do a lot of things?
No, but I'm saying what's the whole deal? What's all this?
Let's finish the last.
Let's finish. Carbon report if Bezdin makes a mistake.
Right.
So what I'm saying is Bezdin can make a mistake.
Right.
So they thought they did the right psak, but it was a mistake.
What do you have to say that this whole gang is going not according to that medrash? Because according to that medrash there was no sin, right? I don't know. Elo Shaddai Mokim Leimar the Hagam Shel Michya Shlachan Elokim Lifneichem Mikom Mokim Enegel Yosef Atzma Heze Inin Bilti Ratzui. However, even after we came to this conclusion that the Eibishter says, that Yosef points out to them that you didn't even do the opposite of what the Eibishter wants. You did what the Eibishter wanted. L'michya shlachan Elokim. But for Yosef, how was it experienced? Yosef experienced a very unfortunate story. So therefore he adds, it wasn't you who sent me here, it was rather the Eibishter. And look what happened now. He turned me into a patron or a friend to Parei and to the ruler over the entire land of Mitzrayim. That also beneged to Yosef, it actually was a good thing. I didn't learn this yet, so let's see what he says. It's the same thing in all matters between one person and another. So he says like this: even when a person does not good to his friend, nevertheless it came from the Eibishter. That's the truth. Some good must come to him from that. Wow, look at that. So they called David Rachmana L'Tava. Unbelievable. Yeah, but what he's saying, imagine somebody does something not good to you, and you tell him, why you David Rachmana L'Tava? Yeah, but he's saying that's the truth. That guy shouldn't be saying it. but somebody was hurt you in some way, either yeah. You know, we say every day, right? I shachat to connect the ben beguf ben mein mein khayri ben bkhal shali ben venus ben beratzen ben shag mes ben medibul ben meise ben gulachen. Yeah, yeah, if anybody sins to me, yeah, I ask you, please don't punish him for what he did to me. I completely forgive them. Then what did you continue? I shouldn't sin again. How do the two flow together? We're talking over here about I completely forgive anybody who sins to me. And we continue in the same exact, part of the downing. What's the kasha? Nervous. How is it that somebody sinned to me and hurt my covet, hurt my this, hurt my that? Because of my ego. Who asked you to be hurt? Why were you offended in the first place? Yeah, because your ego. So you say to the Eibishter, I'm sorry for getting upset. I'm sorry for having an ego, and I hope I won't sin again in the future to you in this way. Okay, yes, Leima. Yeah, it doesn't say it in Chassidus. About Kolpanim, what do we say over here? That when another human being does something to you, yeah, what's the feeling that a person feels inside of them? It's very, very hard to get over it. When the Eibishter does something not good to you, you don't have these feelings that you know that it's very hard for you to get over it. What do you have instead? Yeah. David says a story about a Rav, or it's an observation, or it's a story. I'm not sure, but here's the scene. There's a Rav, and there's a sheikhet who comes to him, and he asks him, "I shechted this animal, and the animal those days, was worth a lot of money." And he asks, "Is the animal kosher or treif?" The Rav looks at it and he says, "Treif." The guy just lost whatever it is, $2,000. He lost his parnasa for the next few days. And what does the guy do? No, he walks out. He accepts what the Rav said. Then another two guys come into the Rav, and they're fighting over $100. Yeah, and they say it belongs to me. No, he stole it. He's a ganav. He's a this. The Rav paskins it belongs to Shimon and not to Reuven. Yeah, what does Reuven do? He's cursing the Rav. You menuvel, how dare you? I'm gonna get you yet. Over here for $2,000, the sheikh just accepts what the Rav said. Yeah, in the other case, for even a smaller amount, the guy is nervous. In one case, it touches his ego. In the other case, it doesn't touch his ego. So what we're saying over here is when even another human being wrongs you, the Rebbe says this is latava of it. How could you help yourself deal with those emotions that a person feels? The Rebbe is telling you that just like whatever the Eibishter does directly is latav. So what this person just did to you is actually good, and not good because he punished you and you had to be punished and you deserved it, which is like you deserved it as one of the meanest combination of words I believe exists in the English language. No, it's good for you because you're going to benefit like Yosef became king. That's how it's good for you. And that applies to what another human being does to you. Okay, Al Kopanim. We saw it by when Yosef was sold, we saw Begili that it was Latav of it. And not every time do we see in a revealed way when somebody else does something bad to you that it is Latav. Anyways, if the Eibishter helps, Beis we should bring about this whole ice. Yeah, it helps a lot. It helps a ton. This Ace Hay is a Fabrengen. It's unbelievable. Okay.